Every piece of advice you have ever received about money has been solving the wrong problem. The real problem is not how much you earn. The real problem is not how much you spend. The real problem is the invisible architecture, the structural forces that make poverty self-reinforcing and wealth self-compounding. And nobody drew you the blueprint. Today, we draw the blueprint. After studying Warren Buffett's shareholder letters across 5 decades, cross-referencing the behavioral economics literature, and mapping the specific mechanisms that separate those who escape poverty from those who don't, one pattern emerged, clean and repeatable. It is not hustle, it is not luck, it is not timing, it is architecture. Most people believe poverty is a financial condition. They believe it is measured by the number on a bank statement. They are not wrong, but they are dangerously shallow. Poverty is not a balance. Poverty is a system of forces. Think of a satellite in low Earth orbit. At a certain altitude, atmospheric drag is so constant, so invisible, so perfectly relentless that the satellite must burn fuel just to maintain its position. Not to advance, not to climb, just to survive. The moment the engines stop, the drag wins. Re-entry is inevitable. This is exactly what happens to anyone living below a financial escape velocity threshold. Every structural force, the premium pricing on small quantities, the higher interest rates on smaller loans, the absence of liquidity buffers that forces catastrophically expensive, short-term decisions. Every single one of these is drag, invisible, relentless, permanent. This concept is called poverty drag system, and the Buffett doctrine, built on compound interest, margin of safety, and the ruthless elimination of unnecessary friction, is, at its core, an engineering solution to the poverty drag system. And understanding that changes everything about how you play the game. Let us go to physics for a moment, because physics does not have opinions. In 1945, aeronautical engineers were trying to solve a problem. Why did certain aircraft, no matter how powerful their engines, fail to break through a certain speed barrier? The drag force at high subsonic speeds was not linear, it was exponential. The faster the aircraft tried to go, the more resistance the air generated, until the energy required to go faster exceeded any engine that existed. They called it the sound barrier. For years, people assumed it was a physical, insurmountable ceiling. So then Chuck Yeager flew the Bell X-1 at Mach 1.06, and the barrier dissolved. Not because physics changed, because the aircraft was redesigned around the drag, not against it. The shape of the fuselage was altered to redirect the shockwave rather than fight it head-on. This is exactly what happens to the person trapped in financial drag. They spend their entire energy fighting the drag head-on, working more hours, cutting more expenses, applying for more credit, when the solution has never been fighting the drag. It has been redesigning the structure so the drag redirects around you. The Buffett principle of structural design over brute force is the X1 fuselage. Berkshire Hathaway was never built by working harder than other companies. It was built by eliminating the specific frictions, management overhead, tax drag, leverage risk, these reputational exposure, that ground down every competitor around it. Research into Berkshire Hathaway's model reveals that its compound annual growth rate of approximately 19.8% over 58 years was not the result of exceptional individual picks. It was the result of an almost fanatical reduction of structural drag. While every competitor was fighting the sound barrier, Buffett redesigned the fuselage. And the consequence for those who do not? The drag compounds in reverse. Every year spent in high drag conditions does not merely delay wealth. It actively constructs a deeper gravitational well that requires exponentially more energy to escape. The longer you wait, the harder it gets, not linearly, exponentially. That is not pessimism. That is physics. Now let us make this concrete, because abstraction is a comfortable place to hide from uncomfortable numbers. The poverty premium, the extra cost of being poor, is estimated by researchers at Oxford's Saïd Business School to add between $800 and $1,300 per year to the baseline costs of low-income households in the United States alone. Here is how the trap works. A household without a $400 emergency buffer takes out a payday loan at an effective annual interest rate of 391%. That loan costs $60 to borrow $300 for 2 weeks. The hidden cost of not having $400 is $60. The hidden cost of that $60 loan is that it pushes the next month's budget $60 short, triggering the next loan. The loop is not a metaphor, it is a mathematical structure. Meanwhile, a household with a $10,000 investment portfolio pays $0 in loan fees, earns a 7% average annual return on index funds, and receives $700 per year simply for having money. The penalty for not having capital is not the absence of that $700, it is the presence of the $60 loop, every single month. The annual cost differential between these two households is not $700. It is $700 plus $720. In loan fees plus the opportunity cost of stress-driven decision-making. That last number is the cruelest one. The system does not just take your money, it takes your capacity to think clearly about money. It exploits the very resource you need most to escape it. The trap is not financial, it is cognitive, and it was engineered that way. So here is what we are going to do. We are going to dismantle this system loop by loop. Complete all 4 of these, and you will not just understand poverty differently. You will have the blueprint to make it structurally unsustainable. As now we enter the first loop. This one is called the Liquidity Paradox. Most people believe they cannot save because they do not earn enough. That if income just increased by a certain amount, $500 a month, $1,000 a month, then saving would finally become possible. The belief sounds reasonable. It is the most widely held financial assumption in the world. In 2013, researchers Sendhil Mullainathan of Harvard and Eldar Shafir of Princeton published a landmark study titled Scarcity: Why Having Too Little Means So Much. Their finding was not about money, it was about bandwidth. The cognitive load created by financial scarcity, the constant mental arithmetic of shortage, consumes approximately 13 IQ points worth of cognitive capacity. That is the equivalent of losing a full night's sleep every single day. That is the same as trying to operate a business while someone is drilling into the wall beside you at all times. You can function, you cannot optimize. This means that low-income earners are not failing to save because they lack discipline. They are failing to save because the condition of scarcity has structurally impaired the executive function required to make long-horizon financial decisions. Consider 2 workers, call them Marcus and Daniel, both earning $42,000 per year. Marcus has a $1,200 emergency fund, Daniel has 0. In March, both experience a $600 car repair. Marcus draws from his buffer, absorbs the hit, and continues. Total cost, $600. Daniel has no buffer. He takes a payday loan at the industry average rate of 391% APR. He pays $90 in fees to borrow $600 for 2 weeks. He repays, but the $90 deficit pushes April's rent short. He borrows again. By December, Daniel has paid $720 in loan fees, not on the original debt which was cleared, but on the cascading chain of micro shortfalls triggered by the original $600 event. Marcus built a $1,200 wall. Daniel paid $720 because no wall existed. This is called the liquidity buffer effect, documented extensively in the Federal Reserve's annual survey of household economics and decision-making. This is the mathematics of being one emergency away. So how do we break this loop? The first concrete action is this. Build a $500 liquidity wall before any investment activity begins. Not $1,000, not 3 months of expenses. $500 in a separate, labeled, non-touchable account. This is not a savings account. This is a structural intervention. The moment that $500 wall exists, the Mullainathan-Shafir bandwidth tax begins to reduce, because the brain's scarcity response system is triggered by perceived proximity to catastrophe, not by actual wealth. $500 does not make you rich. It makes your brain function like someone who is not under siege. This step is not a wealth strategy. It is a cognitive restoration. It buys back the 13 IQ points you need to execute the rest of this blueprint. Think of it as buying back your own mind first, before you try to invest it anywhere else. Now we enter the second loop. This one is called the cost-of-capital inversion. Most people assume that interest rates are determined by market forces, that banks set the same rates for everyone and individuals either qualify or they do not. It feels neutral, almost mathematical, a number you earn through creditworthiness. Research into Berkshire Hathaway's model reveals that Buffett's core competitive advantage for the first 30 years was not his investment returns. It was his cost of capital. Berkshire's insurance float, money held from premiums before claims are paid, gave Buffett access to investable capital at an effective cost of less than zero. Negative cost of capital. He was paid to hold money that he could then deploy into high-return assets. Meanwhile, a household with a 580 credit score, borrowing $5,000 on a personal loan, pays an average APR of 28.7% as of 2024 Federal Reserve consumer credit data. That is the same as having a business model where every dollar of growth costs you 28 cents per year in drag before you generate a single cent of return. On the inversion, wealthy entities access capital below the rate of inflation. Households in financial stress access capital at 28% to 391%. This is not a difference of degree. It is a structural inversion that makes wealth self-compounding and poverty self-compounding simultaneously. A core tenet of the margin of safety is that the price you pay for anything, including money itself, determines your return before your investment even begins. Imagine two landlords purchasing identical properties worth $200,000. The first landlord has 750 credit score and accesses a mortgage at 6.5% APR. Monthly payment, $1,264. Annual interest cost in year 1, approximately $12,870. The second landlord has a 580 credit score and accesses a subprime mortgage at 9.75% APR. Monthly payment, $1,716. Annual interest cost in year 1, approximately $19,363. And same property, same value, same rental income of, say, $1,800 per month. Landlord 1 profits $536 per month. Landlord 2 loses $76 per month. They bought the same asset. The cost of capital made one profitable and one insolvent. This is the mathematics of being charged more for the same money. So how do we break this loop? The Buffett principle applied here is, attack the cost of capital as aggressively as you would attack any investment decision. A 5-point credit score improvement can reduce your borrowing rate by 1.5% to 2.5%, which, on a $200,000 mortgage, saves between $3,000 and $5,000 per year. That is a higher return on a few hours of credit optimization than most investors get from their entire portfolio. The first concrete action: dispute every inaccurate item on your credit report within 90 days. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau reports that 1 in 5 Americans has a material error on their credit report. That error costs you money every single month it exists. Removing it is not a credit hack. It is restoring accuracy to a document that controls your cost of capital for the next 30 years. This is not about gaming the system. It is about refusing to pay the surcharge the system charges for inattention. Now we enter the third loop. This one is called the market misread. Most people treat the stock market as a prediction machine, a place where you succeed by correctly forecasting which direction prices will move. If you guess right, you profit. If you guess wrong, you lose. It sounds logical. It is also the reason most retail investors underperform a basic index fund by 3% to 5% per year. Or as Benjamin Graham, whom analysts identify as the intellectual architect of the Buffett doctrine, introduced the concept of Mr. Market in 1949 in The Intelligent Investor. Mr. Market is not a prediction machine. He is a deeply emotional, occasionally irrational business partner who offers to buy or sell his half of a business every single day at whatever price his mood dictates. Dalbar Incas, an independent financial research firm, has tracked investor behavior versus market returns annually since 1994. Their 2023 quantitative analysis of investor behavior found that over the 30-year period, ending December 2022, the S&P 500 returned an average of 9.65% annually. The average equity fund investor returned 6.81%. The gap of 2.84% per year compounded over 30 years. On a $10,000 investment produces a difference of $97,000, nearly 10 times the original investment. Lost not to the market, but to behavioral errors in reacting to Mr. Market's daily mood swings. That is the same as hiring a master chef, giving him a world-class kitchen, and then ignoring every dish he makes because you panicked the moment you smelled smoke. The Buffett doctrine on Mr. Market is this: his irrationality is not a risk to manage. It is an opportunity to exploit. In 2008, when Lehman Brothers collapsed and the S&P 500 fell 37% in a single year, Mr. Market was in full panic. He was offering to sell shares in Coca-Cola, Johnson & Johnson, and American Express at prices reflecting catastrophe. Berkshire Hathaway deployed $15.6 billion in the fourth quarter of 2008 alone, the single most aggressive capital deployment in the company's history up to that point. The retail investor sold, Berkshire bought, not because Berkshire had better information, because Berkshire had a different relationship with Mr. Market. Research into the model reveals that Buffett's famous quote from his 1987 shareholder letter captures it precisely. Mr. Market is there to serve you, not to guide you. Consider two investors, one who invested $10,000 in the S&P 500 index. In January 2008, panicked in March 2009 at the market bottom, and sold, locking in a 50% loss of $5,000. And one who invested the same $10,000 and did nothing. By 2023, the second investor's account held approximately $43,000. The first investor, who timed the exit perfectly wrong, or held cash that had been quietly eroded by inflation for 14 years. The delta, $38,000, produced not by intelligence, but by relationship with uncertainty. So how do we break this loop? The Buffett principle solution is deliberately boring. And that is precisely why it works. Automate every investment decision so that no individual emotional state can interrupt it. Set a standing order to invest a fixed dollar amount, even $50 per month, into a low-cost total market index fund on the same date every month, regardless of what Mr. Market is feeling. This strategy has a name: dollar cost averaging. It is not a secret. It is not sophisticated. It is the structural equivalent of removing yourself from the negotiation with Mr. Market entirely. You cannot panic sell what you have set up to automatically buy, and you can't chase returns if returns are being averaged systematically. This step is not a wealth maximization strategy. It is a wealth protection strategy. It restores the margin of safety that Mr. Market's emotional volatility constantly tries to strip from you. Think of it as setting the autopilot before the storm. Not because you cannot fly in turbulence, but because autopilot does not have feelings. Now we enter the fourth and final loop. This one is called the compounding architecture. Most people know in the abstract that compound interest is powerful. They have seen the charts, they nod along, and then they do nothing, because the chart always shows the result of starting at 25, and most people watching this are not 25 anymore. So compound interest becomes something that was missed, a train that left without them. The Buffett principle, and this is perhaps the most cited and least understood of all his documented insights, is that compounding is not primarily a function of rate of return. It is a function of uninterrupted time and the ruthless elimination of anything that resets the counter. Analysis of Warren Buffett's wealth accumulation timeline reveals a staggering fact, documented extensively by Morgan Housel in The Psychology of Money. Approximately $81.5 billion of Buffett's net worth of $84.5 billion, as of the time of Housel's writing, was accumulated after his 65th birthday. He had been investing successfully for over 50 years before that point. The compounding architecture required 50 years of runway to produce its most dramatic result, and that is the same as a snow-capped mountain that looks unimpressive for 49 years of snowfall and then produces an avalanche in year 50. The snow was always compounding. It just needed time to reach critical mass. Let us run the math that most financial presentations conveniently skip. Two investors. Both start at age 35. Maria invests $200 per month in a diversified index fund at an average 8% annual return. She never increases her contribution. She never withdraws. She invests for 30 years until age 65. Total contributions, $72,000. Final portfolio value, approximately $298,000. James also invests $200 per month at the same return. But James withdraws $5,000 at age 45 for a used car, resetting a significant portion of his compounding base, and takes a 2-year pause during a career transition at age 52. Those two interruptions, totaling approximately $9,800 in withdrawn and paused contributions, cost James not $9,800. They cost him approximately $67,000 by age 65, because compound interest does not forgive interruptions. It penalizes them exponentially. The architecture must be uninterrupted. Buffett's core holding period for his best investments is famously summarized in a single phrase: forever. Not because he lacks alternatives, because interrupting compounding is the single most expensive financial decision a person can make. This is the mathematics of letting time do the lifting. So how do we break this loop? The answer is to architecturally separate your compounding capital from all other financial activity. The most structurally effective way to do this, in a jurisdiction like the United States, is a tax-advantaged retirement account. specifically a Roth IRA or equivalent, funded to the maximum allowable contribution every year. The tax advantage is not the primary benefit. The primary benefit is the structural friction it creates against withdrawing. Early withdrawal from a Roth IRA triggers a 10% penalty plus income tax on earnings, which makes the account psychologically and financially uncomfortable to interrupt. That discomfort is a feature, not a bug. It is the lock on the compounding engine. This step is not about maximizing returns. It is about making it structurally inconvenient to interrupt your future. It rebuilds the time horizon that poverty's cognitive drag destroyed. And think of it as building a time capsule for your net worth and sealing it. Here is the thing nobody tells you about poverty. It is not a punishment. It is not a character flaw. It is not evidence of insufficient effort or inadequate ambition. It is a physics problem. And physics problems have engineering solutions. The system that charges you more for being less resourced is not designed around your failure. It is designed around your absence of structural design. It exploits the gap between where you are and where the architecture of wealth begins. But that gap is not a chasm. It has measurable dimensions, specific mechanisms, and known interventions. You are never failing. You are flying the wrong fuselage through a sound barrier that nobody showed you was there. The moment you understand the drag, you can redesign around it, but not by working against every force that has ever pushed you down, but by redirecting those forces the way the X1 redirected a shockwave. You do not need to be stronger than the system. You need to be more architecturally intelligent than it expects you to be. And here is the final truth that Buffett's 58-year body of work keeps whispering in every shareholder letter, every public appearance, every quietly radical act of long-term thinking. Wealth does not reward the fastest. It rewards the most structurally patient. You have not missed the window. You have just been handed the blueprint. See on the next one.